On this episode of the podcast, I have with me Andy Liu. He is a senior software manager at Vroom. Topic of today, we're going to be talking about helping mentor people from senior ICs, lead positions to manager positions. And we're going to touch on some of the skills that Andy wishes he had early in his career, now that he's been a manager for a number of years. Andy, thanks for being on the podcast.
Thanks for having me, Amir. Yeah, very excited to be here.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So as I mentioned, I guess, we're talking today about helping people grow skills, especially from that, senior, IC position, lead position into a manager position. I mean, you've been a manager for a while. Kind of talk a little bit about some of the high levels. Maybe we'll start at the high level of when you're trying to help somebody and develop their careers, kind of what you're looking for and kind of what signs you're trying to pick up on in terms of someone who might excel in a management role.
I've been mentoring software engineers for a couple of years, as you mentioned, being my management role. So I think I learned a lot through the years, and also I've worked with many different engineers at different levels as well. So I think the first thing that comes to mind when I think about this stuff is, which also from experience I went through, like kind of touched upon, like what I kind of knew earlier on in my career that could have helped me to kind of speed up my career path into management positions. Is that I feel like a lot of ICs, they're more focused on what they're currently doing, very the detailed tasks, right? Which is all fine. That's very natural. But I think they get caught up in it sometimes. So, I talk to a lot of my direct reports. I kind of, be curious, right? Always ask like why behind some of the problems they're trying to tackle. Like, don't just, take it as is and try to work through it. I think, get different perspective, talk to more people, try to learn the problem. And also when you pick up different perspectives and speak to others, also kind of opens your mind up as well. Like, there's multiple different solutions to tackle a problem. So I think always ask that why. I think that's very important, and try to understand the why behind the problems, even from a business perspective, right?
Exactly. And I think that be curious, stay curious is something that I've heard a lot, especially from managers. And so I guess we talk about the why and being curious and staying curious. So a lot of times you have people in an IC role, they're very focused on the job at hand. They want to meet deadlines and deliverables. For an IC to move into a management position, how do they have to shift their mindset to start looking at the overall business environment and how their particular role affects the overall business and maybe the roadmap, the features they're working on?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I feel like again, kind of highlighting like the IC role, and also like the dynamic they're in. They're like within their team or within their pods, for example. So sometimes I think naturally they're kind of like stuck in that team mindset. They only speak to like the immediate team members. So I think like one suggestion I tell a lot of people is like it's okay to reach out to others cross-functionally, speak to others, and try to get more perspective. And I think also their manager should also support them in that sense, right? Kind of be like, you should talk to this person from another team to try to understand more. And a lot of times, again, very naturally, they kind of just like, again, within their constraint to their team, they kind of just move forward. But sometimes it's okay to take a step back and kind of, again, view the problem at a higher level and, speak to others to try to understand a little bit more. And again, I think, sometimes better solutions comes out of that when you take that approach.
Absolutely. If I'm a senior IC, let's say my manager is, let's say not a good manager, right? There's managers that are not good. Let's just actually, let's look down the scenario of I have a manager that's, good at managing, managing above him, but not great at managing me. I feel like, I want to get into leadership role. I want to develop skills. What should I start looking for? Like you asked, talk to other people, just to start being curious, but what should I start doing to help build my own skill set up if I'm not getting that from maybe my direct manager?
Yeah, no, that's a great question as well. And also that I could relate to that very well. Because again, I think early on in my career, I had a manager that was very like goal oriented, like just trying to hit the goals, and then kind of kept pushing me to get things done to hit the goal, and wasn't really supporting me and growing me in a way where kind of exposed me to like other people or speak to others in the organization to allow me to, further my career within the organization. So, and then, he did leave the company, but I had another manager that was a little bit more, definitely helped me with taking the other approach of trying to expose me to other leaders in the organization and speak to others to learn more. And that, which definitely helped me with my career getting to management. And I think mainly, what I learned from that manager was he took like the servant leadership style, which I think is pretty popular now. I think a lot of managers have adopted the servant leadership style, which is great. Like kind of pretty much just supporting like what I want to do, like asking me the questions, like how do I want to grow, right? I think my previous manager didn't ask me those questions, like where do you want to go, how do you want to grow? So I think speaking from IC perspective, I think you should ask your manager those questions as well, right? Kind of pushing for like different opportunities to grow. Or be like, can I potentially speak to another team manager, try to learn more, and like be open about this. Like like even it's okay to switch teams, and which eventually that will challenge you and expose you to learn different things, like it's like from what you're exposed to on your current team. So I think just like ask again, kind of circling back to the original thing I said about asking questions, be curious.
Yes, it sounds like, obviously you're in a circumstance where, somebody's above you, right? They're already in that position of a manager. It's always, you're going to get different personalities in terms of feeling a potential threat, or they realize that maybe their role's in jeopardy, and you just don't know the dynamics, right? But it sounds like the one thing that you're, especially advocating for people who, need to take that step up is to actually just be proactive. Like if you're not proactive, you might not be given the opportunity. If it's given to you, fantastic, right? So maybe some organizations are like, hey, this person's going to be, we know that it's management material. They're going to be there, whatever management material is, by the way, who knows what that definition is. But some people get earmarked, right? It's like, we think this person has what it takes for us. But if you're not in that scenario, you have to be proactive. You have to go and develop the skills. And I guess when you're looking at the skills, right, and looking at yourself, when you make that first step into, okay, now I have the manager title, and you're looking back at it and you're kind of reflecting on, were there some skills gaps that maybe you wish that you had kind of filled in along the way? Or maybe you wish, I wish I had this kind of experience because I need these skills that I just haven't been exposed to?
Yeah, that's a great question as well. But I think luckily for me, when I got into the management role more formally, again, I think I really did have a great mentor. He really prepped me like the right way. So he gave me time, go take these training courses that helps with management, like management essential type of trainings, or like I took a couple of courses on at that time was Linda, but now it's LinkedIn Learning now. But there's some great material prepping you to be stepping into a management role. So I definitely took some good training courses on that helped me. Like for example, the one course I took was like the first 90 days of becoming a manager. Like what are some things that you can do that will help you transition more naturally into management. So I think taking those courses definitely really helped.
Gotcha. Makes sense. And so obviously it seems like, you got to, no one goes into management having that experience. So you've got to get someplace. So you started, taking on obviously your manager directed you, but nonetheless, you would actually recommend people start taking some of the basic training materials, take some courses, first the 90 days of becoming a manager. I'm just curious, when you mentioned your first 90 days, how was that experience like? I mean, obviously you took some training. You sounds like you had a great manager that mentored you. Once you're in that first 90 days, what's that experience, if you can recall at this point? Because I know you've been doing this for a while.
Yeah, yeah. So again, I feel like I take that mentality also with like change management, right? Like, when something changes, I take that first 90-day approach, like how you should break it down into little stages. So, the three main stages I take is like the first 30 days, you kind of just learn, see what's going on with the teams. And then the next 60 days, then you think about ways that you can introduce changes. And then lastly, it's kind of like review, like, the last 9 days, like anything that you have introduced, did it help? Did it not? Or any additional things that you want to improve to make the team work with the team even better.
Absolutely. I think the one thing that also might be true, like on the flip side of this, is someone who wants to be a manager, maybe they're just not, they don't have the right temperament, right? And I think a lot of times people advance in their careers and they're like, well, what's the next step? I'm going to be a manager. I mean, that's where I need to go. I need to move up the ladder. You've had some nice sized teams you've managed, but when you have somebody who, let's say, maybe shouldn't be a manager, really, has other attributes, could do other things, like, well, how's that conversation go? I mean, obviously there's technical leadership that they can go into without being a manager, but is that something you've had to come across?
Yeah, yeah, of course, of course. So I think the way I mentor people and kind of coach people is, all right, like in the software engineering field, there's two tracks you could go down, right? Like the people management route, or like the more technical track where you just manage like projects. You also work with people. Obviously, you have to work with people, but if you do decide to go the people management route, there are different like skills or different kind of training you should get exposed to be successful there. And it's not easy, right? When I explain these two different tracks, I think with people management, there's tons of different personalities that you have to like learn to kind of work with. So I think the first thing I tell everybody is like, which I think, recently I've been pushing more and more is about like understand yourself first, like what your style personality is, and then how, based on your own personality, how can you flex to be able to work with others? I think there's a lot of material out there as well, kind of like take personality tests or you take a working style test that you kind of define or categorize you into a specific personality style. And then they'll kind of give you like your strengths and weaknesses and you kind of just like play on from there. And then of course, there's tons of like material out there or the stuff that they kind of pointed out as weaknesses, how you can improve or what are different things you could try differently to kind of improve.
Absolutely. I guess the one challenge now that you've been a manager for a while is obviously you become more hands off gradually as much as you want to hold that hands on component. I know it's a push pull battle, but how do you, and I get this question a lot from people, is how to kind of stay, keep the skills fresh, keep yourself kind of involved with the technology without being directly involved in the, IC type development role. How does that work for you?
Yeah. So again, I take the people first approach. So by taking that approach, like I speak to my direct reports, I work with people very closely. So, a lot of the conversations we have does get very technical and I kind of use that, like those conversations help me stay connected and stay hands on in a way, even though I'm not really coding. But like, we'll discuss and then potentially they'll show me some code where I'm looking at it. Sometimes I use those situations to help me stay connected. But I'm also pretty active, like, kind of follow certain people and certain like topics on different channels out there, like in Twitter or there's some resources that, I kind of follow as well. Like InfoQ is a really good resource, kind of stay on top of like new technologies and kind of new like new practices. So there's a couple of different ways that you can stay connected.
I was going to ask you, you've benefited from, having great mentors to get you, you're a senior manager right now. You've been in management for a while. Personally speaking, like, you want to progress forward. What do you do in terms of developing your own skills and kind of trying to get to the next level of your management track or your kind of your goals in your career? Like, do you seek out a mentor at this point? I know you're big on being proactive and kind of, self-learning. Is that kind of the path you're taking now?
I feel like, everything is opportunistic. So, this is one thing, again, I tell everybody as well, like when you see an opportunity open up, go for it or else it's just going to slip by, right? And you may miss it. So I think for me, like, well, again, working with my manager is kind of like finding those opportunities and then I'll proactively kind of reach out like, can I take that opportunity to either learn? Can I speak to more different leaders, kind of expose me to, these different situations that can help me grow myself. Like, bigger projects, different programs and stuff like that.
I think what's interesting when you talk about the management side is seeing different environments, different dynamics to be able to have an idea of how you'd manage and kind of steer the situation. I think when you take that first management job, a lot of it's you have some preconceived notions of what you want to happen, or in theory this is what I do, and then all of a sudden you're in it, and you mentioned your first 90 days and trying to establish some parameters. And sometimes the transition in those first 90 days, because obviously you've been, maybe peers with the people now you're managing, is an interesting dynamic because all of a sudden you went from, hey, one day we're sitting side by side to now I'm your manager. Do you recall that as you were becoming a manager in terms of kind of now just the relationships, shifting from, that perspective?
Yeah, that I did go through that. Like a little earlier on in my management career, I was working very closely with the team, and then I did get promoted. So I worked with my peer on that same team for wow, like maybe 10 plus years, and then decision was made that okay, you're gonna go into people management, you will manage him, right? So I think for me, it was a little earlier on in my management career as well. So like I was also kind of trying to figure things out. So,
Mhm.
but again, with my people first approach, it doesn't matter, right? Like I want to get personal with my, whatever you want to call it, teammates, my direct reports, get that personal relationship going first, and then we'll work from there. And obviously, I've adopted the servant leadership style. It's once I'm in the role of managing you as a people manager, like how can I support you? Like in any way I can in my power to support you, to grow you. So again, I've learned a lot of things over the years, different techniques, different tools to kind of help them to kind of find out how, where they want to grow, what they want to grow to. So I've also learned, people also have their own motivations, their own ambitions. So everyone have their own paces. So it's kind of like understanding that and then helping them to grow.
Absolutely. Awesome, man. I appreciate you coming on and kind of chatting with us about this area. I know a lot of people, everyone wants to move up, and sometimes you're always not in an environment or situation where the path is clear or you have somebody who's helping you. So hopefully this helps somebody out there who's trying to progress. If somebody has a question, can they reach out to you via LinkedIn, Twitter? Is there any preferred avenue that somebody could maybe reach out and ask you a follow-up question?
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, I'm pretty active on LinkedIn now, actually. So yeah, I'm definitely open. Anyone has any questions or want to run some ideas by me, I'm more than open to talk on LinkedIn.
Awesome, man. We'll post that in the show notes. Appreciate you being on. Thank you for that. And that's today's episode. We're going to be back again with a different episode, different guests, different set of topics. Two things I'm always asking from everyone is one, I'm getting topics that are coming in, and it's awesome because I just have to go find guests to kind of speak to them. That's easier than me coming up with topics. So I appreciate that. And I don't know where the subscribers or where people are listening to the podcast, or I never envisioned people, kind of subscribing to the levels they are, but it's an amazing growth. So thank you for listening, subscribing. If you're listening for the first time, subscribe. That's really the best way this podcast grows, and hopefully we can help others. And we'll be back again next time. Thanks.